Whoa.
Francis.
Yeah, Francis is
Francis
pretty
Bacon.
heavy. He was heavy. They don't get much
I love
heavier than him.
Yeah,
Francis.
yeah. Oh, I love bacon. Yeah.
Okay, it's election day, as people have pointed out in the United States, and 2022 election day poetry. The cards have been dealt. Now it's Trump or no Trump. And then coming up in the United States, in addition to election day today, is Veterans Day. That's Armistice Day in the rest of the world from World War I. And a few years ago, I did a chapter called World War II Baby. And I'm going to read two from there. World War II Baby. When I was very young, we were at war. The Germans and the Japs were the bad people to be hated and killed. The Russians were our ally and lost more people than we did. The United States lost 405,399 people in World War II. I had an uncle come back from the Pacific with malaria, the Agent Orange of World War II. It took 7 years to kill him. Now the Japs are Japanese, and they and the Germans are our allies, and the Russians are the bad guys, while we're at war undeclared with ISIS, Al Qaeda, and terrorists. In fact, we have been at war hot and cold, always undeclared, at times through surrogates, almost every year that I've been born, against communist, imperialist, fascist, terrorists, extremists. In fact, just about any ists you can think of. And we have lost Korea, 35,516, Vietnam, 58,209, the Gulf War, 294, Afghanistan, 2,216, Iraq, 4,497. Additionally, they were only the wars we know about there also, and then they go on for a whole bunch from the Greek Civil War to now. And there's about 30 of them. Worn out I am. In 1775, the U.S. has lost 1,354,664, of which 507,989 are in my lifetime. Will we and the rest of the world ever learn? Probably not while I live. What a shame. And then one more military poems. A 6 months wonder. I was too young for Korea, although I had a friend whose older brother died there. I was too old for Vietnam, although I had friends whose younger brothers died there. I was working as a civilian for the Department of the Army, and it was precious to get my military obligation out of the way. So I spent from November 1962 through May 1963 in Fort Dix, New Jersey, and Fort Sill, Oklahoma, as just 6 months wonder. I hated it. It was boring, repetitious, and an awful lot of chicken shit. I wanted to get on with my life. It's only later that I got to realize how much I learned in just a few months. The Irish Catholic from New York City worked with the Protestant from Alabama who thought the Pope was a heretic. The college English major found common ground with the high school dropout who thought reading was a waste of time. The local basketball gym rat and fanatic found the same teamwork as part of an artillery crew. The kid from the lily white neighborhood of Inwood saw his black platoon buddies suffer bigotry and exclusion in Lawton, Oklahoma. The teaching of spit shining shoes and cleaning a rifle with a toothpaste made me do things right. It was only much later that I found the answer to my constant question, what's this good training for? The answer was for life. And then from another book of 110 poems, something called Obsession. Since I began writing what I, and hopefully others, consider poetry, it has become an obsession with me. I read it and write it constantly, albeit some of the writing is only in my head as I drive. Perhaps it is because I came to poetry rather late in life after years of nonfiction writing about technology. Perhaps it is because poetry helps me search for truth within me that I've only recently come to accept. Perhaps, oh, who the hell knows? One of my favorite poets, Sharon Owens, has been quoted saying, I find not writing poems to be much harder than writing them. Damn straight. She writes well. I hope I do too. But whatever the verdict, I shall continue. And then I have one that I've read other places recently. Hopefully for you, I haven't read it recently here, but but it was recently published. It's something from Scars Publications called Down in the Dirt. Legends. Suggested theme of a Hudson Valley a writer's center open mic was legends come to life, the living, the dead, and the purely fictional. Wow, a daunting thought on short notice until my wife of 41 years said, what about that fellow that you've written about before? Great. So my subject as a person was a columnist for the New York Morning Telegraph for 20 years. As a former columnist, I know how hard it is to constantly get a regular column out. Additionally, he had buried in Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. And I used to pass there for a year driving to college. I could have heard him calling out to me. He was a bit of a fraud. He gave his first two names as William Barclay. Actually, they were Bartholomew William. He was born in Canada, then voted in the United States, and even held elective office. But there is no official record he ever became a citizen. He was also married for the last 30 years of his life, but no records have ever been found of the marriage. I have published 2 short stories about him. A number of books have been written, and a television series ran for a number of years. My story, the television stories, and many of the books were pure fiction. What is the fascination with this newspaper columnist? Well, in addition to his writing, he was a buffalo hunter, an Indian fighter, a lawman, a gambler, a boxing promoter, a friend of Theodore Roosevelt, Damon Runyon, even named the Guys and Dolls character after him. And in his heyday, nobody fucked around with Bat Masterson. Thank you for putting up with me today.